in the June utility bill, we're going to put a notice in there stating the fact that the city in the future will be participating in a uniform garbage container program. If you'd like to buy a can, this is totally voluntary. There'll be 3 sizes. Call the city for more information.
Okay, thank you very much.
So-
I appreciate that. All right, citizen survey, that's going to go out too, I believe. August, okay. Post-conference, a staff report to the city council, 6/14/07. Is there anything else to be added? Then I adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, make a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? Nobody opposed? All right. I made the first one.
Community and Economic Development Committee, call to order. I ask that you accept the roll call for the previous committees is sufficient for this one. We have a motion to approve the minutes of April 26, 2007.
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then it's passed. Report and recommendations, designation of new TIF area, Phase 1 eligibility study. This is the second TIF that we've studied so far. This is in the TIF district is around Irving Park on the north to Park Lane on the south, Miller and Prospect on the east and on the Prospect on the west. You all have these memos from the Assistant City Manager in which he outlines the information about the TIF. Let me just say one thing. There's one mistake in here. Paragraph 2. It says, while TIF is never mandatory or a necessity, it should be viewed as part of the development package presented to developers to market the city. And then here's the error. It says every community in DuPage County has instituted TIF as part of their redevelopment packages. I'd like to point out that Wooddale has never had a TIF. Jeff?
Yeah, I was gonna note that as well. I believe there possibly is another DuPage County community that hasn't either. There was actually, I was gonna point that out during my presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. So we are in agreement. And I think the reason that the people of Wooddale never wanted a TIF is that they never wanted to take on the indebtedness that the city homeowners would be responsible to pay if it failed. I think Wooddale is most proximate to Bensonville and is familiar with their failures, their restaurant failure, their movie theater failure, and we know that they've used TIFs for political motivations to block the airport and have nothing to do with redevelopment. We are basically not in favor of the effect of TIFs, the fact that the school district and the fire district and the other districts will be prevented from taxing these bodies for up to 23 years, which is the maximum time that a TIF is allowed to exist. I mean, we might be in favor if we had a 5-year TIF or something of a short nature or something that would be considered a home run TIF where we made the money quickly. But for the most part, TIFs have not been as successful as they've been instituted to be by their proponents. And I think it's very important to watch what we're giving to the builders. We don't want to give away something that looks like a wish list to drunken developers on shore leave. Can we call this open? Any questions on the TIFs?
I think he wants to do a presentation on a TIF first,
Okay, go ahead.
and then we could do questions. Is that all right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, tax increment financing, a necessary tool. What is TIF? The definition of TIF is a tax increment financing is a municipal financial incentive tool created by the Illinois State Legislature in 1978 to assist communities in economic development. How can it help? A TIF district's revenues come from the increased assessed value of property and improvements within a designated area. Once established, a base EAV is set. As outdated properties redevelop with TIF assistance, the EAV of those properties potentially would increase. The difference is put back into economic development within that area, which we would designate if we so choose. How is a TIF established? A municipality identifies an economically stagnant or physically declining area. Mandatory studies are completed and public meetings are held. Some of the council members were here for the last study that we did, and it was found that that TIF that we looked at wasn't necessarily a good TIF to move forward with. And as Alderman Lewitton pointed out, not all TIFs necessarily are good. Some do fail, as in Bensonville. Then the county clerk certifies the total equalized assessed valuation of the property in the district. This would be when it would first be established. It would be a baseline EAV. The municipality makes public improvements and provides other assistance intended to spur private development in the district. As Alderman Lewitton also pointed out, 23 years is the max for a TIF district. However, if the TIF district isn't going well, you could dissolve it after 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or you could do as he stated and do a home run TIF, or if you want to make it 10 years, you can set that up. But 23 is the maximum. What about the school districts? Some arguments say local school districts may lose revenue for the life of the TIF, and at the same time, its student body can grow, and the school district would not have the funds to support the additional students. That is one very common argument. An answer to that could be the development in the area would never have taken place if the TIF was not instituted. Then the monies are not necessarily being captured or even diverted because there wouldn't have been that new money in the first place. Impact of TIF on school districts is minimal except for new students. That's another concern. So for newer current students, the state of Illinois uses a school finance formula and sets a minimum per student amount for quality education. If the school district's per student property taxes don't meet this level, the state will make up for the shortfall. State aid can only go up, not down in a TIF. There's a minimum level. Additionally, municipalities have the authority to enter into an agreement with the school district per se and work out some type of deal for excessive TIF if the finances are not accurate. What can we do with TIF? TIF can be used to fund a variety of public improvements and other investments that are essential to a successful redevelopment program, including area-wide public infrastructure improvements such as road and sidewalk repairs, utility upgrades, water and sewer projects, land acquisition, clearance and other land assembly and site prep activities, rehabilitation of older, deteriorating, or obsolete buildings, incentives to retain or attract private development. So now what? Like I stated before, TIF is not a necessity. And we did look at a TIF before in an area, and there's multiple studies involved before you would decide to go with a TIF. The last time we studied it, we did not go past the first stage. I might also note that last time we studied it, it was covered 70 to 80% through a grant, so we paid a minimal cost for that, which was excellent. TIF is a tool, and it's a tool that a lot of municipalities use. It does not mean we have to use it too, but the area that we feel that we need this tool is an area that has been sitting there for, in one instance, the apartment since the mid to late 60s and hasn't been developed since. So obviously, just leaving it the way it is, nothing has happened without some incentive or tool. Like I stated before, emphasis from council in the past has been to do something to redevelop that area. The apartment buildings in that area are over 35 years old. as well as the shopping center is just as old. So we're looking to do something to develop that area. This is the area I'm talking about, and right now I'd really like to turn it over to Director of City Services Gary Holm to continue the presentation and talk about the current state of the infrastructure in that area. After Gary speaks, I want to have Ross Clicker talk about another program in conjunction with this program.
With respect to the infrastructure in the proposed area, Park Lane, Hoover Drive, and Station Drive are all currently in poor condition. The area is in general need of sidewalk spot repairs. In fact, numerous spot repairs. The sidewalks are in generally need of repair. More importantly than those two things, though, are the water and sewer mains. Surrounding the Georgetown Shopping Center, the water mains are generally of the older cast iron variety, and we frequently have water main breaks out there. In this part of Ward 3, south of George Street, north of Potter, and between basically Station and Mill Road, that general area, which includes this area, has what we call a lot of transite water main. And transite water main was popular at one time. It's in essence an asphalt cement fiber water main. And it's I mean, very crudely saying it's like a paper water main, but it's coated with asphalt cement. In this area, again, in this part of Ward 3, we have numerous amounts of that water main, and we've identified the need to replace it. It's reaching the end of its life, and it definitely needs to get replaced. And finally, on Station Drive, we have a chronic and ongoing sanitary sewer problem. It's an issue that we stay on top of on a regular basis. Therefore, it doesn't affect the residents in the area, but it does require ongoing maintenance on our behalf in order to keep the flow going. So water, sanitary sewer, storms, or streets and sidewalks, all of the infrastructure in this area is in need of improvement.
The other aspect of this proposed area is I believe many of you up on the dais were part of the affordable housing design charrette that we participated in with the American Institute of Architects and the DuPage Homeownership Center. That study focused on this area. The deliverables from that workshop will be presented on June the 14th. I think everybody that did attend will agree it was a very exciting and rewarding experience that showed us what could be potentially done with this area. The reason to look at this area for redevelopment is, quite honestly, as has been stated, it's just to a point where it is basically in need of redevelopment. Shopping centers of the similar nature, if you've been following in the paper and that, there have been stories that Randhurst Shopping Mall, as of next year, will not be. They are going to be demolishing it, redeveloping it into a mixed-use lifestyle center more. We're not looking to do, I don't believe a lifestyle center would be an aspect here, but a mixed-use development providing for some affordable senior workforce housing would definitely be desirable in this area. One of the things that could come out of this design charrette that we did was the actual development plan. If the city wished to see the development plan go further, the TIF tool could be used to acquire the land, and the city could retain the master developer rights so that the development would be done according to the city wishes rather than what a developer wishes. So that is another aspect to look at when considering a TIF for this area.
Just in closure before we'll take questions. What we are looking for is a recommendation simply to go for a feasibility study to see if a TIF would indeed work in this area. The last feasibility study we did was the East Irving, it was termed the East Irving Park Road TIF. That TIF is a little different than this TIF in respect to, there's two types of TIF to meet the qualification for TIF. There's blighted area TIF and conservation TIF. And what we looked at for the area in East Irving Park had to be termed a blighted area TIF because indeed the infrastructure over there was not more than 35 years old. This area is a more standard TIF. The area is very old. It's more than 35 years old. It's not a blighted TIF. It's the standard conservation TIF. So we are looking for a recommendation where council wants to go with the feasibility study, just to go out for an RFQ for qualifications for firms and then negotiate a price. That's what we're asking at this point.
Yes, during that process, if we're given the go-ahead to continue forward, you will be given a complete report by the consultant, and he will be able to answer any of those questions, including impacts on schools and other questions you might have. Again, this is just step one. We have never done a full-blown TIF. There's 4 stages you have to go through. We did a preliminary, and we didn't feel that it was in line with what we wanted. It could have worked, but it was about on an A, B, C, D scale. It was like a C TIF. And it was at that time staff and the city council agreed we should look at a better area, that we really had a need. And we certainly have a need in this particular area.
Jeff, how much retail sales tax will you increase do you project to increase after the TIF is built out?
We have no idea the exact projected sales tax increase. However, what we will have is a conceptual plan to show you of what could happen there. And after that time, depending upon what happens as we go further, we could possibly project something like that. As was presented, the infrastructure in that area is deteriorating. The people that are in that area now are very excited about this plan to redevelop it, to do the infrastructure, and it would all be handled by that entire area and not burden the taxpayers, and we could use our tax dollars to do the improvements in the other areas of the community. This is why so many communities have used this tool, and there is one example of some bad TIFs, but there are so many examples of good area TIFs, and we could present those to you if you needed more information.
I recognize Dan Schalke.
Do you have a cost on the study? The first one I know was covered by a grant, or a majority of it.
The first one would have cost $7,000. We paid $700.
Right.
This next one will probably be more than $7,000. We do not have a grant to pay for this one.
So it's going to cost us more than $7,000. That's all we really know.
Yes.
Okay, secondly, Gary, you mentioned about the type of sewers that are over there. Ward 3 is not in that area that you're talking about for a TIF. If you're talking about Georgetown, aren't they responsible for their sewers and water lines, or is the city responsible for them?
The general area where our transite water mains are runs from Station to Mill, from roughly George down to Potter. And I say roughly George because there's some transite mains that go a little bit north of George up by Georgetown, but within the Georgetown Shopping Center, those are all public.
No, not Georgetown Shopping Center. I'm talking about Georgetown homes, condos. We're not responsible for any of those water lines, are we?
No, but those aren't in the TIF. That's what
I know, but you were talking about the whole Georgetown area when you were talking before about these old water lines. I believe you were talking about the whole area.
Georgetown Shopping Center.
Just the Georgetown Shopping
Has
Center.
the old cast iron water mains.
Okay, not Georgetown, the living area itself.
No, George Street and the new Georgetown townhomes, that was all reconstructed as part of that new development.
But I'm talking about the condos, the 299 condos south of there.
South of George Street along Hoover and Park is where the older infrastructure still
But the
is.
rest of it is not. Something's wrong here, Gary. I'm trying to point out that outside of that TIF district recommended there, the rest of the Georgetown living area, do they have those old sewers?
This area in here,
Yes.
yes, transite water mains run throughout this whole area.
Okay, now who's responsible for those water mains just below the TIF district?
There was numerous public water mains within the Georgetown area itself.
Georgetown area itself.
Yes, the wide sidewalks that you see that run through there, we actually use those sidewalks for our vehicular access to get within Georgetown to go service the water mains. That's why the city had agreed to, like a sidewalk reimbursement every year to Georgetown, because we use those sidewalks. Our water mains and our sanitary sewers run right through the Georgetown area.
But the actual water lines going to throughout the Georgetown lower area belongs to Georgetown.
Well, just like your home, the water main that runs in front of your house is a public main, but the physical line that runs to your house is then a private.
But all the main lines are the cities.
All the main lines are the cities.
Okay.
And a majority of them in this area are that old transite water main.
Okay. Secondly, has anybody approached the Georgetown management or the owners of Georgetown about this program you had on a Saturday? What was it? And we have not received the information on it yet. Has anybody gone to them and asked
First,
about
before
this?
I turn over to Ross to answer that, I want to retract my previous statement about the $7,000. I'm not a TIF consultant, and I could be wrong. It
Okay.
could be the same price.
Okay.
At the design charrette itself, there were several business owners from the Georgetown Shopping Center. All of the property owners were notified of the design charrette.
How about who owns the Georgetown Shopping Center?
A notification was sent to them. To my knowledge, they have not officially responded to anything. But again, the deliverables or the results of that charrette will be presented to the council here on the 14th.
Well, I did stop in for a while during that charrette, and I saw some of the plans that were put together, and they did look fantastic. They looked great. And I'm just wondering why we're not approaching the owners of that Georgetown Shopping Center to see if they want to do this in the first place. We're talking about giving them a TIF and giving them money back without knowing, maybe they want to do this on their own if they see something really nice. Mr. Williams, you wanted to?
We're not at that point yet. What we need to do is we are receiving, this is a grant. The Architects Association and the DuPage Housing Authority are putting this together so that we could, once we have this plan, we would certainly approach them. They would have the first choice.
Then why are we doing this? Why are we talking about a TIF now when maybe we don't even need it once we get this report from them and go to the Georgetown people? They may say, hey, this looks great. We want to do this without having to have a TIF. I'm not sure. It sounds like the wagon pulling the horse or something. Is it necessary to give them something beyond a good plan?
There would be no incentive for them to redo the infrastructure. If they were going, when they redid the last redo of the Georgetown Shopping Center, they just did a facade. They did not touch the infrastructure. They're leaving that up to the city. They didn't really do any real improvements, and all this needs to be done. This is the reason why the Illinois legislature came up with this tax increment financing, and this is the same reason why the majority of the communities in DuPage County are doing this. We could sit and wait, as we've been waiting for somebody to come in and do all this. But the way the market is now and what's happening, it doesn't appear that that is going to create the kind of incentive.
So
originally, when they built Georgetown townhomes, they came in and they did all that. That is correct.
Again, I think you're jumping. Again, the next item we're supposed to talk about is an economic development consultant. I mean, shouldn't he be in on this? Shouldn't this be a part of that?
It is part of it, and they will come in and they will recommend we do exactly this and include.
How do we know
B4.
what he's going to recommend? I don't understand that. You're saying we're going to be hiring an economic consultant, development consultant, and he's going to be recommending a TIF. We don't know that yet. I mean, we haven't seen the study that was done with this grant. We haven't talked to an economic development consultant. Yet we're already jumping way ahead and we're talking about getting a TIF, which we already pay how much money to the schools in Fenton and only supply a very small amount of students. We're going to be taking some of that money away, and what's Bensonville going to do? I just don't understand I don't understand what you're putting in line here. It sounds like we should be doing some of these other things first, and then if it looks like it, then maybe talk about a TIF district, rather than talking about that first and then saying, well, we're going to bring in a consultant, we're going to have this study and to show us that the TIF, you know, if this is a good area for it. I mean, we already had one TIF area that I don't think we turned it down. I think the consultant turned it down and said, no, this isn't a good place to have a TIF. Now we're looking at another part of town that's second, so how do we know that that's going to be an area that a consultant would agree with as well? It's a secondary thing, and yet we're expecting a better grade on it.
This is exactly how economic development is done. This is why for the last 36 years that I've been here, the city councils have not chosen to pursue economic development. This is why the city council did authorize staff approximately $33,000 to look into economic development. This is the plan that was put into place 2 or 3 years ago, and we're getting to that point where some decisions need to be made. All those questions will be answered. But before one thing can happen, these other things have to be in place. Staff has been working with the economic development consultants all along. We know the results of their reports. We've reviewed the results of reports. Staff has done a lot of legwork to save the city money instead of paying an economic development consultant to do all the work. So we're at this point that we're ready to go. And I apologize that you're not all up to date on all this, but it will be coming. And this is the next step. The next step would be to look at tax increment financing for this district. If you choose not to approve it or not to look at it, then of course that's your decision.
I just think it sounds like it would be wiser to have, first of all, to have the economic consultant looking at it to find out if he thinks it's a viable thing, and then looking at the plan that did look very good, and then come back and say, you know, after we've talked to the management, they like the plan, but they need some kind of push on it, and maybe a TIF district would be helpful to get it moving, rather than saying up front, let's spend this money, who knows how much, we really don't know, and we'll see what develops, if anything.
I see a hand up. Joe, what did you want to say?
All right, let's let Jeff.
I was going to respond to Alderman Shockey. Is that okay?
Joe
No,
gives
that's
you
all right.
first.
That's
Okay,
all right.
go ahead.
No, let Jeff go first.
That's what I said. I said you deferred to Joe to go first. I mean, you deferred to Jeff to go first.
Yeah,
Then you'll have it after he finishes.
okay.
Thank you. Actually, we're at a point now with the economic development consultants that we've actually ceased talks with them because we don't have anywhere to go right now because we need decisions to be made. That's the next item on the agenda. I don't know if you've read that and are up to date on that, but staff and the consultants are looking for some direction, and right now we don't have any direction. We need direction on if we're going to even consider a TIF. We need direction on rezoning. We need direction on B4 downtown zoning. We need direction on other incentives. I mean, we can't market our economic development in the city if we don't know what your stance is. We have nothing to market. All we have is come to Wooddale. I mean, we don't have a lot of the key decisions made that they want to market for us. We don't have any of those decisions from what they've told me.
Okay, I got one thing to say. All right, this land, this section here, Mr. Rivera, who is probably going to do it. He's a pretty honest guy. This Rivera, Tom Rivera Associates, is a pretty reliable guy. He's the guy that suggested that we don't do anything with the area that he looked at before because of that. Now, I think we've already